Wow, Mark Carney, that's my boy. I'm gonna vote for him 3 times if I can. Welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of Zillennial Money, and this is episode 50, I think. Like it's another milestone in the show. So what I decided to do was when we started season two, we made season two, but then we didn't start the episode number back at one because I just want the episode number to keep collecting and keep going up. Eventually we'll get to like a really large number, like I don't know, episode 300 or something. So that's why I didn't change the episode number. But yeah, this is episode 50, even though we just started season two. So why don't we not waste any more time and jump into today's show, because we do have a packed docket, and it is somewhat of a diverse set of stories, as you guys will soon see. So the first story of tonight, of course, we got to talk about this huge market wipeout that's been happening over the past few weeks or so, but mainly it's been the past week. It's been extra brutal. Yeah, basically, if you're in like the S&P 500 index funds, maybe you didn't notice that much, but even the S&P 500 dipped quite a bit by like S&P 500 standards. But I know a lot of people on this show, including myself, we have stocks in Bitcoin related proxies and like miners and MicroStrategy, even the Bitcoin ETFs, which have dipped a lot. So yeah, anything to do with more of the risk on side has been brutalized. And yeah, Bitcoin has crashed below 84,000. Is actually kind of hovering around 83,000 as we speak. We're recording this on Thursday night of the 27th of February. So yeah, it's been really rough. And I gotta say, I did not foresee Bitcoin pulling back to this level, at least in the short term. And I was telling people how, next time it pulls back, that'll be the bottom and then it'll bounce right back up. And I've been wrong every time I've said that, and I've said that like 2 or 3 times already. So I said, oh, it's not gonna, if it drops below 90K, then that's the bottom. And then dropped to 84. I'm like, okay, it dropped to 84K, that's the bottom. And then now it's below 84K. So now I'm saying maybe it'll bottom at 80. I think maybe that's possible, but we can talk about that later. I just wanted to show you guys some data that may indicate that the bottom is at least near, if not there already. So this is what's called a heat map. I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, but and it's probably out of date because this only goes up to the 26th, and this is taken yesterday. But the heat map is basically like, where do people have leveraged positions on Bitcoin? And as you can see, there's a bunch of leverage short position. So if it's above the current price, then it's a short position. So you can see that there's a bunch of, like, the lighter the color, the more leverage there is. So there's a bunch of leverage at around 90K or just under it. But it's 90K seems kind of far off, right? I mean, we're not like super far off. 83K we're at right now, but it's kind of far off. But we're closer to maybe like the bottom parts, which you can see that a lot of leverage has been wiped out already. But there might still be some, like a little bit of leverage around the 82 to 84K section. So I guess that's why Bitcoin's been kind of weak, because again, this is like people can take out more leverage if they wanted to at this level. And I'm sure some people are, because degens are going to be degens. I'm not going to personally take out any more leverage. And if I have cash, I'll of course buy, but I'm not touching leverage. Maybe that's a mistake if Bitcoin starts bouncing hard, but yeah, I just don't want to get wiped out, but some people will take leverage positions. And if that happens, if people start piling into leverage longs, I mean, then we might see another dip as the hedge funds and the big whale money wants to, crash the price down and trigger more liquidations, and then that triggers even more. But it looks like from this chart, though, the leverage is mostly cleared out. Again, this is maybe out of date because I took this or I stole this from somebody on Twitter yesterday. But yeah, it looks like maybe the leverage is pretty much gone, if not, fully gone. So that might be a good sign that we're bottoming, is what I'm trying to say. Now, another sign, another glimmer of hope that we might be at least close to a bottom is the fear and greed index. So this is the crypto fear and greed index, which is different than the stock market one, but the stock market one is also pretty low in extreme fear territory. I think the stock market one, it's the way it works is that it ranks from 1 to 100, 1 being like just absolute extreme fear, and then 100 being extreme greed. And the stock market one was at like 20 or 19, if I remember correctly, right now. And then yesterday, the extreme fear in the crypto market hit 10. So that's very low, as you can see. Like, this chart with the red line, you can see how, like, it doesn't, if it dips down to 10, it usually doesn't stay there for very long. And I just checked again the crypto fear and greed before we started this show, and it ticked back up to 16, but 16 is still considered extreme fear. So we're not out of the woods yet, but maybe there's some glimmer of hope. And usually, like, as I said, it doesn't stay at extreme fear for that long. So usually that means it's time to buy, right? Like, if it's in extreme fear, I know people tend to overcomplicate it, but I always say that I'm gonna follow it, right? Just buy when it's extreme fear, and then sell when it's extreme greed. And for some reason, I just forget about it and never do it, and I always like lose money that way. So hopefully, I've learned my lesson for the future to actually follow the fear and greed index. Unfortunately, I'm kind of out of cash at the moment, so I can't be buying big. But if you do still have cash somehow, maybe, this is not financial advice, but usually it's good. It's a good time to buy when it's extreme fear. But anyways, all of that aside, I just want to kind of toss the question back to you guys. What do you guys think of, the kind of market so far? How do you feel? Are you stressed? And do you think that the bottom is near, or when's the pain going to end, is kind of the overarching question. I don't know who wants to take it, but feel free to jump in.
Yeah, it's been a huge mess for like the past week or so. It's been really bad. Like to most of us, or maybe me specifically, you would think, oh, it's just a day, it's probably okay. Then the day becomes the next day, and then the next day, and it becomes like a whole week. So this entire week, um, I'll say personally, I'm the type of guy who has sort of like an emergency fund. Uh, I'm like the most safest person here out of the bunch of us. And even for me, it's been getting pretty tough. Like, yes, the S&P hasn't moved a whole lot, but it definitely has moved, and I have noticed it on my brokerage accounts. And it's not ideal to have that number lowered. And even on the other end, I do own Bitcoin miners. Like Bitfarms has been doing extremely rough for me, and it's not pleasant to see a new price every single morning. Like, who wants to see that? No one. And I even own IBIT, which is a Bitcoin ETF, and that's been lowering. And then I've been, with the cash available, just trying to dollar cost average and buy every time it continuously dips. It's been like a really tough week, and we can only hope that this hopefully ends sooner than later. But yeah, I literally just got paid today, and that entire paycheck just went to my brokerage account so I can like try to deploy more. But after that, I'm gonna have to wait a bit, and I swear I have no cash, and that's coming from me too, guys. You guys know. I got couch cushions. No, I'm joking. But yeah, it's been tough. And is this the bottom? I don't know for sure. It's like that. I don't know. There's like a terminology for this, or like kind of like a saying, I guess, to investors. But you don't know when the next disaster is going to be. No one knows and can ever predict the future. And then who'd have thought that'd be right now? So, I personally think it's the best to always keep cash aside, but I personally also don't know if this is the bottom because I don't have like that magic fortune teller, you know, glass like circle thing, right? So I don't know for a fact, but it could be edging towards the bottom. But the only thing I'll say is we'll wait and see. So who knows?
Well, Dom's couch cushions are legendary. Every time there's a red day, he's like, I'm gonna buy. I'm like, how do you still have money? You just gotta like dig a little deeper in the couch cushions, and there's always money there somehow. And then if you run out of money, you sell the couch cushions, and then there's another wad of cash right there. Yeah, good points though. Anyone else wants to jump in and impart their opinion?
Are we at the bottom? It's tough to say. I feel like we've been thinking that we're near the bottom for a long time, and we haven't been at the bottom. So I don't know if necessarily the route is to try and time the bottom, because I just don't think you're going to be able to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, I've been just basically buying every time I see that it's low, when I can, or lower. Is this the end of Bitcoin? No. Are we going to keep going up from here? Yes. That's kind of my prediction. I don't know if the reversal will happen, tomorrow, next week, a month from now, 2 months from now, but I'm confident that the reversal will happen in the not too distant future, and that we will be able to reap the benefits of buying in these dips here for the future recovery. But we're gonna kind of have to see how it works. This last few weeks were pretty brutal on my portfolio. Not happy, but I'm confident that in the long term this will play out, and we will get the bull run or a bull run that is superior to what we've already had. And if we get something that's better than what we already have, we should be able to get some seriously large gains. That's kind of my perspective. So this is just a time to keep accumulating, because we have a bit of a period here where you can get it for a little bit cheaper. Might as well keep ramping up on that front from my perspective, and that's kind of how I've been going through it. Because again, if Bitcoin can be at 108,000, people will pay for it at 108,000. People will pay for it. Like, why wouldn't you buy it at 82,000? So, might as come on. It just seems pretty self-explanatory to me to keep buying right now. And then with regards to like miners and stuff, just keep averaging into those as well, because maybe not to the same extent, but like if we can get a nice bull run going where Bitcoin's price is increasing a lot faster than percentage wise than it has been so far, for the last like month and a half, 2 months kind of thing, then the miners will have a nice opportunity to run too. So you can reap some nice gains on those potentially as well. We'll have to see how it plays out in the end though, because it's really like, if the momentum changes for the miners, they can move massive amounts. And there's just no guarantee that when momentum will change, if momentum will change. As far as I'm concerned, the thesis on the miners is pretty much consistent. It's just a matter of when this turns around, and not getting too overextended while trying to buy the dips, etc. So that's kind of my thoughts on the whole scenario. I think we'll be out of this in 3 months from now. I think we'll all be going, why didn't we buy more at 83, 80,000, 82, whatever. So that's kind of my perspective.
The meme was like the guy who's like, Bitcoin is like 100K or something, and then he's like, oh, I'm so stupid, why didn't I buy it? And then Bitcoin crashes to 80K, and then he's like, I'm not buying that shit. It's like, don't be that guy, right? Just don't be him. Sunil, your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly if we're at the bottom. Like every time I say we are, it goes down another 10%. So I've been wrong already on that. every dip kind of feels like the last dip before we go up, because we're all kind of anticipating like the true Bitcoin bull market started. Like a lot of people are saying that we haven't even started the real bull market yet, so we'll see where that goes. But I mean, my opinion on the current price action, I'm not really a huge believer in like political news stories moving markets as much as like the CNBC world kind of pushes. I think we just experienced like a gap fill of the Trump bump. Like there was a massive blow off the top that occurred in November and December after Trump, and that happened for a lot of risk assets. Anticipating a more favorable regulatory framework around like Bitcoin and tech stocks, and I think that we just got the Trump bump gap fill, because everything's kind of come back down to where the post-election rally kind of started. Like we're technically, if it's going to be a true gap fill, we're gonna go down another 10 or 15% of some assets. I kind of like look at this from different angles. I'm looking at MicroStrategy, which kind of front runs Bitcoin on the way up and the way down. So MicroStrategy has been getting beat up for like a month, while Bitcoin has been getting beat up for like a couple of weeks. So I think MicroStrategy just crossed over into oversold territories with the relative strength index. Like the RSI has just kind of crossed over into oversold yesterday. So you're seeing a little bit of a divergence in price action, and that's usually an indication of a bottom in at least like the Bitcoin world, and or near bottom. Like in the Tesla world, I'm seeing a lot of Elon derangement syndrome kick in with like on Twitter. A lot of upset people who are blaming Elon's political activity for the current price action. I mean, it's kind of hitting every stock in the risk markets right now. Tesla happens to be a high beta stock. So I just think that that's kind of what we're seeing right now. When you see a blow off the top occur, you do need to see a gap fill. It's like good for the market, it's healthy. I think things are looking bright for the Bitcoin bull market. I didn't think that like the gap fill would be as low as 82,000, or might go to the high 70s if it keeps dropping. But it always happens. It's never surprising. It's always like surprising as it's happening, but it's never surprising after the fact. If you look at the chart patterns, they look like as they always look. So, and I also think that like right now, like markets, especially things like risk assets, are kind of a barometer for like markets are always seen as a barometer for the popularity of the president. I think that like it's just kind of like a barometer that like Trump has like used up a lot of his political capital post Trump bump with the situation in Ukraine. He's putting tariffs on Europe now. He's putting tariffs on China. He's putting tariffs on Canada, Mexico. He's forcing a ceasefire in the Middle East. There's a lot going on right now. He's like ramped everything up to 11, and the market does on a day-to-day basis react to news in the market. But then like if it hits a bunch of sell orders, it becomes a sell-off. And I just think that like the market was waiting for the panic to achieve its gap fill, and we're probably gonna bottom in the next 2 to 5 days. And I think that within a month or two, things are gonna start looking a lot nicer. And I anticipate my leveraged MSTR position, which is actually a very small percentage of my MicroStrategy position at this point, but it's been decimated since December. So I'm just like eagerly waiting to get out of that. But back in January, I did achieve my goal of getting as many MSTR shares as I wanted to get for the year. I just didn't reach my goal of getting out of the leveraged product. So that's just like kind of my last trade of the year. And then I could just kind of chill while the Bitcoin bull market that we expect kind of plays out.
Yeah, and talking about MicroStrategy, did you see that post by Jim Cramer today? Or there was a news story about how Jim Cramer was saying to avoid MicroStrategy, and we all know that inverse Cramer is 100% correct. like that time
it's bottom signal.
Yeah, he said something good about Palantir, and then Palantir just immediately started dropping after he said that. And it was like literally he nailed the top. Like as soon as he said one good thing about Palantir, the stock just crashed immediately. So if that's any indication, then that means that the next, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 trading days, like the next 1 to 2 weeks, we're probably going to see a bottom in MicroStrategy, and probably that means Bitcoin by extension as well, because it's hard to see, you know, one bottom without the other bottom as well. So yeah, I'm pretty hopeful. With regards to the miners thing that Tristan brought up earlier, I just think that for the miners to really outperform Bitcoin, there needs to be a miners need a special kind of condition to outperform Bitcoin, and that is when the Bitcoin price goes up faster than the hash rate growth. And unfortunately for the miners, for the vast majority of the past year and a half or so, we've seen the exact opposite. We've seen the hash rate explode, and then the price kind of grind. And that's like the worst case scenario for miners, because you know, it's costing them more and more to mine Bitcoin. And instead of a leverage play on Bitcoin, is kind of like a leverage play, but only to the downside, right? Like when Bitcoin goes up, then it goes up, then the miners go up the same as Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin crashes, it goes down twice as hard. So unfortunately, that's been the case. But just because that's been the case in the past, I don't predict that that's always going to be the case, because we have seen short durations where the hash rate growth is slower, the price growth is faster than the hash rate growth, and that happened in February of last year. So of course not February of this year, it kind of sucked, but February of last year, of 2024, we saw a brief moment when the hash rate was not growing as fast as the price, and that was off of the ETF approval news. And then we saw another time with the Trump bump after the 2024 election in November. So those two times, if you look back on the history and the price performance, the miners did outperform Bitcoin during those two brief windows, just those 2 months, and then it underperformed kind of all the rest of the months. So yeah, if we ever get a time again when the price just explodes absolutely crazily, and the hash rate growth is not able to keep up with the price growth, then we'll see the miners go up. And I foresee that if the bull market is not over, which I don't think it is, if the bull run is still going to happen, I predict that there will be a time later on this year where that'll occur, where the miners will grow faster than Bitcoin, because the price grows faster than the hash rate. So that's all I wanted to say on the miners. And one last thing before we move on to the next story. During times like these, I just want to remind people of the importance of Bitcoin, right? Because a lot of people might be new. So obviously, I know you guys are not new in this room, but maybe our audience members who are watching, maybe there's somebody who's new who just got into Bitcoin, and then they're about to like table flip because they bought at 109 and now is 80 or 81 or whatever it is, right? So the unique thing about Bitcoin is that it's undilutable, which means that there's you've heard the 21 million cap, right? So because there's only, well, I mean, actually there's not even 21 million, because a lot of it hasn't been some of it hasn't been mined, and a lot of it has been lost, and all these factors. But assuming that it is 21 million, even if it is exactly 21 million, the max it could be, if you own, let's say, one Bitcoin, which granted is a lot, and you don't have to buy one at a time, but let's say if you own one Bitcoin, just for the sake of simplicity, then you own one out of 21 million, and no matter what happens, no matter how much Bitcoin drops, one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, right? And what that means is that you have one out of 21 million of the entire pie, and that portion could only get bigger as people lose their coins, right? And every year there's got to be some people that like mess up and they accidentally lose their passphrase, they accidentally just send it to the wrong address, whatever, right? There's a certain percentage of Bitcoin that gets lost every year. Even now that is super valuable, some people are still not careful and they lose it. So when that happens, your portion of the available Bitcoin increases. So and the and even if it doesn't increase, it can never decrease. Is what I'm trying to say. So that's kind of the powerful idea behind Bitcoin, and that's kind of what makes it unique as well compared to other cryptos, right? Because I know like Litecoin and stuff like that is also capped, but like who uses Litecoin? Like who cares about Litecoin, right? Compared to other cryptos, there's a lot of it, most of it's uncapped, and I think that this is something that's like super unique about Bitcoin and why it's important and why you shouldn't panic, because no matter how low the price drops, one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. And there's also the Saylor put, right? So this came from an argument, well, not really like an argument, but like Warren Buffett is famously very anti-Bitcoin. And he was like, during one of the investor conferences, he was like, somebody asked him about Bitcoin, and he said, I would not buy Bitcoin even if it dropped to $20. And Michael Saylor responded, if it drops to $20, he's going to buy all the Bitcoin in the world. Right? So theoretically, because Bitcoin is capped, remember, there's only 21 million out of it. So if it ever dropped to $20 each, then Michael Saylor has enough money to just buy it all. So that means that theoretically it's actually impossible for Bitcoin to drop below $20 because you have that put, right? Of course, it would be kind of catastrophic if it dropped to $20, and surprise, I don't think it's going to happen, right? I don't think that that's like a shocking thing for me to say. That's very, very unlikely. But let's just say if it happened, then Saylor is going to buy it all, and the most you can lose is whatever the cost basis you bought at minus whatever it takes to get to 20. So if you have one Bitcoin, you can at least recoup $20 per Bitcoin, worst case scenario. All right, let's move on to the next story. And this one, in happier news, or maybe this will make you even more infuriated, the liberal leadership debate just happened last 2 days ago. And for the liberal leadership debate, I know the Liberal Party of Canada is not very popular in this room right now. But the reason why I decided to cover this story is because it is still very important, because whoever wins the Liberal leadership race will automatically become prime minister, at least for a little bit, until the next election. So regardless of what you think about the Liberals or any of these candidates that are in the debate, I think it's important to at least pay attention to it, right? So I'm not sure if you guys have the opportunity to watch the entirety of the Liberal leadership debate. I know they had one in French and they had one in English. I don't think any of us here speak French, so I only watched the English one. And I'm sure you guys, if you guys did watch it, you guys watched the English one as well. And we'll go through what was talked about. I'll go through some of the highlights, and then and I'm gonna be like totally biased, right? Like no one is not biased, and you'll see what I mean in a sec. So we're gonna go through the highlights, but before I jump into it, I just also have a disclaimer. Every time we cover one of these kind of long events where it's like a 2-hour video, because this debate was 2 hours, we always get like 1 or 2 people in the comments being like, oh, you guys, how could you guys comment on this when you guys didn't even watch the whole thing, right? Like, bro, it's 2 hours, right? Who has that time? Well, I do, because I actually watched the full 2 hours as it happened live, by the way. But please forgive us if not every single one of our hosts today on this show has watched the entire 2-hour debate. Okay, so just, I know, right? Like, there's going to be angry people that are like, oh, how could you comment on something that you didn't even watch completely? Like chill, okay? I'm going to go through the highlights, and I'm sure some you guys have at least watched a little bit of it, like clips of it here and there. So we're gonna go through it, and you're not missing anything crazy, trust me. So the Liberal leadership debate, the first 40 minutes of it was it wasn't a Liberal leadership debate for the Prime Minister of Canada. it was a competition as to who hates Trump the most. So it was just a big circle jerk of who hates Trump, right? Like it's just a Trump hate fest for the first 40 minutes. So if you guys watch the debate, you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about. And especially, I wanted to point out that Chrystia Freeland must have like a personal vendetta against Donald Trump. Like, judging from her tone, you would think that Trump like killed her family or something, and she's on like a revenge arc, because for the first 40 minutes they were talking about Trump. Okay, so it's like, it's fine if you criticize Trump when the topic is Trump, but then later on in the debate, she always like comes back and brings Trump into the conversation just randomly, and decided to take jabs at him when the topic isn't even directly related to Trump. So I posted this tweet, and it's like, take a shot every time Freeland mentions Donald Trump, you would die immediately of alcohol poisoning. And Freeland was like, I hope Trump is watching this debate. And if you guys scroll down, I posted this little meme. It's like, Chrystia Freeland thinks that Trump is watching the debate, and like how he's getting so hurt from her criticizing him. And Chrystia Freeland's like, is like the guy is like, I feel bad for you, and Trump's like, no, I don't think about you at all. I doubt he was watching the debate. Like, face it, come on. So that was Chrystia Freeland. And then this is another post by Charitis, who said that who categorized there were only 4 candidates, right? Who categorized the 4 candidates as to what he thought, and I actually very much agree with what Sharia Tees said here. So Frank Bayless, he was the most relatable. He actually, I would say, outperformed my expectations. Like, it was a A, right? Like, pretty good, pretty reasonable arguments, pretty reasonable guy in general. I didn't expect that of him. So good job, Frank Bayless. Most relatable. Karina Gould was the most professional, and that's like a kind way of putting it, right? I don't know. To me, she came off as sort of like a DMV worker, or like Service Ontario worker, right? Like, just very like, very professional, but like a little hint of like Karenness, if you guys know what I'm talking about. But yeah, anyways, Gould was most professional. Freeland was the most funny, and not funny in a good way, as I described earlier. She just like randomly decides to take shots at Trump, and she took a shot at Tesla for no reason. So she took a jab at Tesla by proposing 100% tariffs on Teslas specifically, and she says that her reasoning is that this is done to hit Trump's friends, right? Like, because it's a jab at Elon Musk, right? But yeah, that was kind of bizarre. Like, I get it that you're going after American companies because Trump is like trying to, tariff Canada. But to single out Tesla specifically, when there's other American automakers that like Ford, GM, that do a lot of business in Canada too, right? But yeah, anyways, like, she's like, oh, I'm gonna go after Tesla specifically because Elon is Trump's friend and all that stuff. When coming back to Karina Gould, she actually also bizarrely claimed that the reason why Canadians rejected the carbon tax was because the government did not communicate it well enough. Not because the carbon tax had issues with it. No, like, it's the government didn't sell the message and didn't communicate the benefits clearly enough to Canadians. That was a very bizarre claim that Karina Gould made, and which is why, most professionals kind of being a little bit kind to her, in my opinion, because it seems to me like she's just like the strict government worker who's like not really empathizing with the needs of Canadians, in my opinion, right? Just based off of that comment about the carbon tax. And last but very much not least, Mark Carney, he was the most AI, according to Sharia Tees, and I agree with that. And in fact, I would also say that not only is he the most AI, he's the most like not even the latest version of AI. He's like ChatGPT 2 when we're on ChatGPT 4.5, who just came out today. He's like ChatGPT 2. He basically didn't say anything insane, but also did not say anything that was even remotely memorable to me, right? Again, this is my opinion. People are going to yell at me in the comments, but this is just me, right? In my opinion, Mark Carney, his every response was completely forgettable and sounded like ChatGPT, right? It was a very curt, very buzzword filled answer. And yeah, it just didn't appeal to me, but maybe it did to some people. Back to Frank Bayless. What stood out to me about Frank Bayless was he proposed building 2 pipelines from west to east for natural gas. And this pipeline thing is actually a point of contention, maybe one of the only real points of contention within the Liberal Party, because Mark Carney, who's the front runner right now, he's kind of wishy-washy, right? Like he was caught saying one thing in English to people in Alberta and saying one thing in French to people in Quebec regarding pipelines, and I guess he expected that we don't have translators or something, but he basically told the Alberta people in English that, oh, we need to build infrastructure. So implying that he's gonna be for building pipelines, and then he told the people in Quebec who really, don't want pipelines in their in the province that, oh, I'm not gonna force Quebec to build pipelines through the territory of Quebec. Well, I'm not sure if you looked at the map, but I thought the whole point was of building the pipeline was so that we don't have to go into the United States, because that we already have pipelines that go through the United States, and then Trump is using that as leverage against us in the tariffs talk. So if we're building a pipeline that only goes through Canada, there's literally no way to get from Ontario to the Atlantic Canada, to the Maritimes, without going through Quebec if you don't want to go through the United States, right? So that's just how basic geography works. But I guess Mark Carney is like, oh, I'm not gonna. He wants to, the Quebecers to vote for him, right? So he's like, I'm totally on your side. I'm not gonna force you to build that pipeline. So that's kind of disappointing from Carney's side, but it's encouraging from Frank Bayless, who says that, yo, listen, like we need these pipelines. If I become prime minister, I'm gonna build them. So yeah, that was kind of mostly the highlights. And it's a 2-hour debate, so it's going to take me a really long time to go through every single point, and I'm not going to do that right now. I just wanted to point out that, in my opinion, there was no real disagreements. Maybe the pipeline thing, as I mentioned, is the only thing, but there's no real disagreements between the candidates. And I saw this post on X where this guy, I don't know who he is, but just a random guy who's saying that, oh, I found it striking how amicable and polite that the leadership debate of the left and center political parties are. They even hug at the end. And if you contrast that to the CPC with the Conservative Party of Canada and the GOP debates in America, it really tells you something about the types of people these parties attract. And I responded to this. I said, no, this is the wrong conclusion. What this shows is that everyone on the liberal or left wing in Canada, at least, is almost 100% politically aligned with each other on major issues and major policies. This means that no matter who wins, nothing will fundamentally change because they're basically all the same person. This is, I think, the correct interpretation from what I deduced after watching this debate. It's actually not a good thing that these candidates are so amicable with each other, because it just shows that they don't actually disagree with each other on anything, and they're basically all just different versions of the same person. And this is what I've been warning about with Trudeau leaving. It's yeah, we don't like Trudeau anymore, and then we can all pretty much 80% of Canada agrees that Trudeau is not the best person to lead the country anymore. So we're gonna get Trudeau to step down and replace him with Mark Carney or someone else who is basically 100% politically aligned with Justin Trudeau and gonna support basically the exact same thing that Trudeau was supporting. So this is just my opinion. Again, feel free to disagree. But if you do disagree, leave a thoughtful comment and don't just call us stupid, or you can call us stupid. I don't know. I don't care. I don't read the comments that much anyways, although I did read some of the comments on last week's video, which we'll talk about later. But before we do that, let me pass the question off to you guys. First of all, did you guys watch the debate? And what were your thoughts on just the debate in general? Were there any candidates that stood out to you? Were there any, either in a good or a bad way, right? Either they said something crazy that you really didn't like, or they said something really great that you want to support them now, or anything in between that as well. What do you think of any of the stories that we covered earlier about, Shariati's categorization of these candidates, and then Freeland having a personal vendetta against Trump and all that stuff? And yeah, lastly, what do you think of this comment that I went through about, political politeness and amicability towards your political, I guess, rivals, even though they're from the same party? But since they're all competing against each other for the liberal leadership debate, the leadership position, then they are rivals, right? So what did you think about that comment?
Yeah, I watched some of the debate. I did not watch all of it. I must confess, it was because I was starting to get a bit of a headache from the number of times they said Trump. I'm mostly joking, but it was pretty uninteresting, all things considered. I suspect that this is part of the fact that we've gotten kind of used to the much more dramatized debates that we've been seeing, especially out of the States. This was definitely more of a classical debate by political candidates, so maybe that's why it wasn't as entertaining. I did find that they seemed to be in agreement a lot of the time, and they kept being like, oh yes, back to what this person said or that person said. I want to do all of what they said and then more, the whole time, which, kind of speaks to them being reasonably aligned, as Andy was alluding to. I'd say that I didn't find any of them particularly compelling, like, it's not that they are bad politicians necessarily. It's just that they were all pretty much saying the same thing, so it all kind of blurred together in my mind. It was like there were a couple times where Bayless said a couple things where I was like, okay, like I wasn't for the capital gains tax increase. Like, I thought that kind of sucked. And he said that he wasn't for that, and I was like, yeah, I'm on the same page with you on that one. And then, Golding was mentioning like the childcare thing they did, where it was like cheaper childcare. I was like, sure, childcare cheaper. I'm fine with that. Sure, that sounds like a perfectly reasonable idea. But it wasn't like I was sitting there going like, wow, I'm riveted. You guys are saying everything I needed to hear to save my country, and now I'm so confident in your ability to run this country and stand up to Trump, because that's what we got to do. We got to stand up to Trump in every scenario. We gotta stand up to him. We got to counter tariff on Trump. That's what we got to do across the board. That's how we have to do it. So, and I will say that Freeland would not stop talking about Trump. It seemed like her entire platform was, I will fight Trump. And she was like, I have to mention this on every single time they give me the microphone. It's like, they'd be like, in how would you solve the economics? She'd be like, well, Trump. They'd be like, how would you fix the military? Well, Trump. And I was just like, okay, I get it. Trump's kind of a big deal, but also we want to hear what you're going to do for the country, not what you're going to do about Trump all the time.
Trump lives rent free in her mind.
Very rent free. He is like there in terms of like her mind. There's like a 40% at least of it is just Trump floating around, and I understand it's kind of a big deal. He's kind of a big deal. You know, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be talking about him. It was just the sheer quantity of Trump references by Freeland in particular. I was like, okay, we get it. You're gonna fight Trump, but also we do have to realize that we are in bed with the elephant. So trying to fight the elephant isn't going to necessarily work. So that was a fun time. Yeah, I think that kind of. Am I missing any questions? Yeah, I think you're the.
You haven't commented on Mark Carney, which I don't blame you because, like I said, he's the most forgettable candidate on the entire stage for the debate, and I don't blame you for absolutely forgetting him because I don't remember a single thing he said, and I watched the entire 2-hour debate live as it was happening.
Yeah, Carney said a fat load of nothing. I found like everything he said, someone else had said already, or said it better, or you know, that's not to say that he doesn't have good ideas. It's just that like whatever he was saying, he was much less. He was definitely not as like. He wasn't communicating what I wanted to hear the way some of them were more so, and he wasn't communicating how he was different or what he'd done or how he'd do something differently from any of the others. It was basically all just like it was very much like yes ands from him. Like someone would be like, "I would counter tariff Trump, smart counter tariffs," and Mark Carney would go, "I would do that also." Just insert more words and that's pretty much it. Which I mean, maybe it's good. You want someone who is a little bit of everyone, but also it made him exceptionally he was not a standout at the debate. He was very much just like there, you know. I wasn't sitting there being like, wow, I can't wait for what Mark Carney has to say, like ever. I was just like, oh, okay, it's Mark Carney's turn. Yeah, and I don't know if I would say he was AI sounding. He was just kind of like politician speaking. It felt like he was just like, I'm just gonna say, we'll do what the other people say, and then I'll sprinkle in a little bit of extra sauce that is pretty forgettable. And I will say I did find it interesting how Gold in particular was throwing shit at Carney, like questions, not necessarily like actually being like, Carney, you're the worst, but like she was like throwing some questions here and there for him, and I was kind of like, seems like she's decided who the real competition of this race is, and it's not the other two. So I did notice that as well, which I thought was interesting with the what's it called, moderator being like, I'll ask the questions at one point. I was like, geez, okay. Yeah, so it was just I can't say that I'm sitting here like, wow, I'm really excited for any of these people to be the new PM. It's like okay. I mean, it's not Trudeau, I guess. You know, is it just going to be Trudeau but a woman, or Trudeau but Mark Carney? I don't think Bayless has got much of a chance, honestly. So I'm not even gonna reference that one. But yeah, and assuming that they're as aligned with Trudeau on as they are with each other, I feel like we're just gonna kind of replace Trudeau with Trudeau adjacent, and the ball will keep rolling, just the way it has been.
You know, it's really kind of disappointing how the race is kind of stacked in favor of Mark Carney right now, where if you had someone even like Frank Bayless, which again I don't know too much about him because the most of what I know about him was from when I watched the debate. But I think that he was at least moderately appealing. Like if it was, let's say, Frank Bayless, who somehow, let's say he won the liberal leadership race and then he went into an election, and let's say instead of Pierre Poilievre on the conservative side, it was someone, it was one of the two previous conservative leaders like Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole, which I find far less appealing than Pierre Poilievre. I think that, you know, if it was Bayless versus Aaron O'Toole, it would be kind of like difficult for me to decide. I might like actually pick Frank Bayless over Aaron O'Toole at this point. So yeah, it's a shame that like, you know, they're trying to coordinate Mark Carney, in my opinion, but maybe other people will disagree. But Sunil, I think you're up next.
I did try to make a solid attempt to watch it, and I got like 20 minutes in, and then it reminded me of how I feel when I watch clips of The View. Like it was just like very much audience captured. They're like the liberals are going to receive like the Karen vote for sure, as you mentioned before, and yeah, like it was like a screeching, like it was just the worst. It was like the worst episodes of The View, though. Like the ones where they aren't even like arguing with themselves; they're just arguing with the camera, and like they're arguing with Trump, but he can't like argue back with them. And yeah, like I thought Mark Carney was like the milk toast version of Klaus Schwab. Like he was less like creepy, but he was just using the same one-liners that Klaus Schwab uses. So he's like the globalist. Klaus Schwab approved candidate for the Liberals is clearly a coronation. So it was like really, really boring. I eventually switched to highlight videos and I watched some commentary on it. And I thought, like, I think I kind of like lost a few like brain cells by the end of the morning when I got through those videos because it's just like, I didn't feel enlightened. It was the same old liberal doctrine, same old liberal policy. They've got nothing new. It seems like they're clearly too scared to actually like they don't want to like fight against their own legacy. They kind of know it's not gonna go well. I mean, I think that like what you do see right now coming out of the liberals is that like they're backed by a lot of like strong institutional power. They're back. They like the individuals and like the energy behind the Liberal Party, like the base of it, is still like kind of proud of what they did. So I think there's still like enough energy there, like that, where the Liberals could be competitive with the Conservatives going into this election. But like they don't have the goods. The Conservatives are just kind of, I think, biding their time and kind of waiting to release their own campaign, their own like platform, and their own ideas that are hopefully going to be more captivating than this. The whole like TDS, Trump derangement syndrome situation, EDS situation. Like I understand why they're mad at Trump and like the whole like geopolitics situation, but like it just kind of reminds me of the same old like internet grifter influencers online that like went after, like, I don't know, there's been many rounds of this like the world against Elon or the world against Trump on the internet. And like the world against Trump, I've seen it many times. I've been following Tesla stock since like 2015. And like this kind of reminds me of like the Twitter saga where like all the people who like taunted Trump through Elon through the Twitter saga, like watched him like buy Twitter, like successfully like fire like 90% of the staff, predict that Twitter would crash. Like within a year after that, like Elon is standing in the White House with like Trump as president, and like basically running the show now, and like now like auditing, like the Biden administration like started like lawfare against Elon, and they're auditing um like all of Elon's companies, and now he's auditing them. And like this is the guy the Liberal Party has decided to pick a fight with. Like that's the energy that like Chrystia Freeland's like EDS, Elon derangement syndrome, kind of evoked in me. It was like watching an episode of The View and watching like Whoopi and Joy Behar just like bitch and complain for 2 hours about like Elon and Trump, and that's basically how I felt after watching that debate. And this is like somebody like me, like I'm like a somebody who's been like addicted to politics my whole life, like a center left guy, like always kind of into this kind of politics. But like, yeah, I mean, I think the liberals are just like sticking to their old doctrine, their old formula. They've got nothing new, and they like they've set up the debate to make sure that nobody like no outsider could really come in and kind of disrupt their flow. And it kind of reminds me of like how the Democrats behaved after like the whole Biden Trump debate debacle, and I just think that the liberals are headed down a similar path. I guess the only saving grace for the liberals at this point is maybe Canadians still like Justin Trudeau's agenda. I just don't like Justin Trudeau, so I guess time will tell. But I mean, but for me, the debate just kind of proved that we're moving towards kind of like a Doge situation coming to Canada eventually, and that's kind of what I see is probably eventually happening.
It's your opinion that what the liberals are doing is not going to work, right? Because I asked this question because I'm watching the polls, and these days I'm seeing kind of this a trend, right? Like it's before it was just echoes, however you say it, which, you know, as a liberal poll and the CEO, like I talked trash about him on Twitter and he blocked me on Twitter, right? Which I didn't even know until one day I just like, I wanted to see what he was saying and I couldn't. But yeah, before it was just him and his company that was saying that the liberals are making a surge. But now we're starting to see other polls that are more credible than Echoes, in my opinion, that are also showing maybe not as huge of a surge as Echoes, but there's definitely a clear trend that the liberals are making a comeback. And if you go to 338 Canada, which is a polling aggregator, the liberals and the conservatives are almost pretty much neck and neck at that point. And the liberal vote is more efficient. So if it was like the same amount of support, like percentage wise of the popular vote, then the liberals will win the election, even if it's a minority government, but they would win. So yeah, do you think that this is like kind of, because it reminds me a lot of what happened in America, right? Where this, you know, there's a huge polling like surge when Kamala got the nomination. Do you think that that's like exactly the same thing that's happening in Canada right now? Or do you think that this surge is real and there's a real possibility that they could get in charge, right? Because as you said, they're using the same old tricks as before, but it didn't as the Democrats in America, it didn't work for the Democrats. But do you think it's going to work in Canada for the Liberals?
I think that like there's always like the new guy bump you get in the polls, and like he's definitely getting that, Mark Carney, and like Kamala had a similar situation after she was made the nominee. So like I think Carney's definitely gonna get that bump, and then the media is giving a lot of positive attention. Like I don't think the media is really being that hard on him. He had a couple of like hard questions in some of his interviews, but for the most part, it's been easy going. So I just think he's getting the bump. I think the Liberals are like sucking in support from like the NDP and like Green Party and Bloc Québécois, so like they might be able to keep this fight going for a while. So like I could see this being like a situation where the Conservatives poll in the low 40s and the Liberals poll in like the mid 30s for a while, and then when the election actually happens, it's a question of if Canadians are kind of sick of this general like milquetoast message that they're getting from the Liberals, which is basically just like status quo, keep spending, no talk about budgets, no talk about anything kind of like cutting edge or exciting in policy. Like in the United States, they're talking about like Bitcoin and stuff. So we're not getting any of that kind of thing in Canada. We're getting a very, very boring, same old status quo Justin Trudeau type government. And I think that when it goes to an actual like election debate, and like Paul Lia is able to kind of do his like sly debate tactics, which you've kind of seen him do a little bit of in his own leadership debate, I think it will poll well. But I'm probably like less. I like if you asked me like 3 months ago what I thought it would be, like there's a 0% chance the Liberals could pull off a win, and now I think there's probably like a 5 to 10% chance you could see like a minority Liberal government. That's kind of what I see as the worst case scenario for like the Conservatives. But I just don't think that like Mark Carney has the goods to have the staying power to make it through an election. I think he's kind of like a slightly more charismatic version of Michael Ignatieff, but I still think he's kind of a similar type thing. He doesn't have any actual like political experience. I think he's kind of being made to be a sacrificial lamb, but ends up becoming like really, really popular towards like people who like to vote for like technocratic center left elite type candidates. So I can certainly see the Liberals sucking in all that support that they're currently or were losing from like the NDP and Green Party and Bloc Québécois.
So no, obviously I didn't watch the Liberal debates, but I did get some key takeaways from you guys and chatting and whatnot. It sounds to me as though the four candidates are buddy with each other, and they're probably going to have the same policies as previous times before. And I personally don't know how I feel about that. Probably not in favor of that. So if that's the government moving forward, then I suppose that's very unfortunate. So I think as Canadians, we know what to do moving forward, and whoever gets elected gets elected. But come fall, the choice is yours. But I think most Canadians know what to do, and I'll say that.
Wow, that was really brief. You're not going to comment on any of the candidates kind of specifically, or?
Well, okay. So as an emergency, I did go on Perplexity. I tried using Gemini to quickly search like what happened in in the debate, so to speak. They were in talks.
The comment section is gonna kill you. Like the comments are gonna be so brutal on this video. It'll be like, who do you have as a host? He didn't even watch the entire debate, and he didn't even know any of the highlights. And you're gonna get a few of those comments. I guarantee it.
That's fine.
Don't read the comments, Tom. Don't read the comments.
Well, anyways, if I do, this is how many Fs I give. So on that point, yeah, like it looks like point number 5 says domestic issues. There's potential shifts away from Trudeau-era policies such as the carbon tax, but I think some of the members were probably for the carbon tax, so I guess that would not necessarily be true in a sense, because they would just follow similar ideologies. So is that really good for Canada? I don't know. So I can comment on that. I don't know any of the personalities of the candidates either, so I'm not going to speak upon that. But again, they just sound like clones, and I don't really like that, and I don't want to watch it. So yeah.
Fair enough. Talking about comments, let's actually talk about some of the comments that we got on last week's episode. So this was from our clips channel, and a few of our clips actually got quite a lot of views. Like for this channel, right? A few hundred views is actually quite a bit for us because it's a small channel, and a lot of them got, quite a few hundred views. And in particular, there were two. There was like the Mark Carney one, and then the Liberals saying that Canada First is alt-right clip. And let me just read you some of the comments that I got, right? So this man named John Smith, M7K, commented on the Canada First video. Canada First is a right-wing slogan. Absolutely. This isn't Canada. Canada is a multiracial society, and such things like ethnic nationalism, which is what this slogan is about, does not align with our identity. And I'll ask the obvious question about this. What is a real Canadian? This is actually a really hard question to answer, which is indicative of why slogans like Canada First just don't really work. And I just included a comment after that as well, because I don't want to have like a segment full of just hate comments and like bad comments. Let me just include like a good comment too. So the one after it is Somebody said, WTF is with all these hate comments. Good job, boys. Got my sub. So thank you, whoever Drysdale S2Y is. Thank you for subscribing. Yeah, like there's a lot of debate on this. So maybe I'll take a break, right? Because we have a lot of time still actually for today's show. This is I think the last story actually. So we'll take our time with this story, and I'll take a pause and just let people respond to just kind of maybe the first comment on Mr. John Smith, who is attempting to teach a podcast full of people of color about multiracial societies. So I just found that kind of ironic, which is why I picked it. But whoever wants to respond to Mr. Smith, do you think that maybe we already answered this question a little bit in the video itself, but maybe we can elaborate on this point a little bit more. How do you respond to the argument that Canada First is definitely, absolutely a right-wing slogan, and it's like trying to establish, by saying Canada First, you're trying to establish an ethnic nationalist ethno-state, which does not align with Canadians, with Canada's identity. So what do you have to say to that?
I just have to say this. That's basically that, because it's just like, I don't know, like what does he want me to argue? Like it's retarded. It's like it's just culture war. Like Trump came up with America First, so that means that became a white nationalist slogan, and now I can't say anything nationalistic about Canada. So like that's what I have to say.
All right, short and sweet. Anyone else wants to respond?
I just really want to push back on the fact that they're making the assumption that this is one what is a real Canadian. That technically Canada First is referring to a place. Realistically, like Canada is a country, it is a place. We live in Canada, you know. He doesn't even say Canadians first. He says Canada first. So from my perspective, that is more so like a we need to do better for Canada, the country, and all the people who live within Canada, regardless of ethnicity and all that. It's not about that. It's about doing better for Canada and the people who would live in Canada. It's not about I don't know. It's just, to me, it's not really about the extra stuff that they're assuming that it's about, right? Like there's assumptions that are being put on this from this person's perspective, that this is, you know, about ethnic nationalism and what is a real Canadian, etc. And like it's just they're making assumptions on what this statement is really about, and I just don't think that those assumptions are necessarily a fair assessment. And just because Trump says America First doesn't mean that anyone saying their country first is from the same perspective as Trump saying it, because Trump is a different person. He has different perspectives. He has a different agenda. He is like this. It's not the same person. It's not like you know, if we went if we were in China talking about China first, like would you be saying, you know, that this is, I don't know, like the same thing? It's just like, or Thailand first or Brazil first. It's just like, yeah, it's just like, you know, people say stuff like this, especially, I don't know if you've watched the Olympics, but like whenever I'm watching the Olympics, I'm like, yeah, go Canada, you know, the whole time. Like, is that now? Because like that's patriotic. That's that could be nationalist. So like where do we draw the line? Is it just because he's saying it from a political perspective? So I don't know. It just seems like it's I feel like they're just looking for a reason to call him you know, I don't know, like I feel like they're just trying to set him up as like the Canada's Trump, and it's like he's not Canada's Trump. Let's just get that clear. And also, yeah, I don't know. It's just like I just yeah I don't know.
And also to defend Trump a little, when Trump says America first, it's very clearly not about race either, right? I don't know why like people are making this connection between Trump saying America first and establishing like a ethnic nationalism states or something like that. Like, where's the connection, right? Like, because all I've seen Trump do is do these tariffs, and tariffs don't care what color your skin is or anything like that. Like, none of Trump's policies has been trying to establish like an ethno state. Like, he's just saying America first because in his opinion, America's been like ripped off by all these countries, and America needs to get the minerals from Ukraine and get like concessions from Canada, which I understand that you guys disagree with that policy and you guys don't like it, but like, to bring race into this is just really weird, and I don't get it, right? And also, just to re-emphasize the point that I brought up earlier, here's a man named John Smith, which I don't know if it's his real name, but maybe it's a nickname, maybe it's a fake name that he uses on the internet, but I'm gonna assume if your name is John Smith, then you're white. So it's like a white person talking to a podcast where 3 out of the 4 hosts are not white or people of color in Canada, and attempting to teach those people about multiculturalism, which I just find really funny. Dominic, your opinion?
I was gonna
Yeah,
say
for
one
sure.
more thing actually. I was just like, gonna add, like, when you like they set up a mental block where it's like anybody who says Canada first is now can be called a racist. It's just like a weaponization of like language, like racist and that kind of stuff. Like weaponization of this kind of language that sets up for a really unhealthy debate. Now, like, nobody could ever say anything positive like Canada first ever again, or they're a racist. It's just stupid. That's the last thing I'd say.
Yeah, no, I'll actually like piggyback off that in a moment. But I think this type of person is one of those people who go on Yelp and just like have a reason to make negative comments about a restaurant or something. It's like you're never gonna win the arguments. No matter what you get through them, they're just gonna have their like really outrageous views and things. They just want to like pick a fight where they can pick a fight, and it's just outright ridiculous, I suppose. And again, there's nothing you can really do about it. And yeah, when I think of Canada first, it's not out of proportion. I don't think it's a race thing at all. I think it's simply just Canadians who live in the country of Canada. I never thought for a moment it was specifically for one race, like Caucasian per se. Like, I think it's just the whole nation as a whole. So I think this person's probably like a flat earther, like theorist, and you can't get through them. And that's just is what it is. And like, even if you were to meet this person real life at like a diner or something, or a coffee shop, and you have a conversation with them, you try to convince him otherwise, what he's saying is ridiculous. You just won't be able to get through it. So his opinion is his opinion, and I don't think we'll fix that. But no, I think it's crazy. Canada's Canada, not just Caucasianness. So
Yeah, and I totally agree with everything you guys said. And on that topic, there's actually a second comment on that same video, which I formulated a long X post regarding it. But let me just read you the comment, and then I'll go through my X post, and then I'll toss it back to you guys again. So the second comment, this person named God Ender X says, "Wow, you're so clever. There was a speech one time, and a guy said the thing, and he was a liberal," referring to Wilfrid Laurier, who said Canada first back like 100 years ago, right? Is like, oh, holy shit, you nailed it. I do find it quite hilarious when people like you think that Canada first includes you, because if you ask the Canada first crowd that isn't you, they would call you a foreigner and say that you're not welcome here. So here's my response to this person, right? So I just go through, this was a comment that I received on that video just to give a little bit of a context. But I said in the video, I argued back that Canada first was in fact a phrase from a speech made by Wilfrid Laurier, a famous Liberal Prime Minister of Canada. And there's nothing alt-right about saying Canada first. And I have to say that the comments I got on that video were extremely disappointing, referring to this one and the one that we just talked about earlier. This person commented that it's funny that people like you would think that Canada first includes me. Well, why would it not include me? The only conclusion is that this person thinks that I'm not part of Canada. And let me take a wild guess why they would think that I'm not part of Canada. Could it be because of my race? For the record, I talk to the Canada First Canadians all the time, and I can tell you for a fact that they don't make race an issue, and that Canada First is not about someone's ethnicity. It's about keeping Canada strong and independent and caring about our own citizens, all of them, regardless of ethnicity, ahead of citizens of other countries, something that the Liberals have forgotten, because the Liberals are essentially, they're arguing, and I assume this person is maybe a Liberal, maybe they're NDP, or they're at least very against Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, right? So the Liberals are all of a sudden against Canada First because I don't know why, but it implies that they don't want to put Canada first. But anyways, yeah, for the record, I talk to the Canada First Canadians all the time, and they don't make race an issue when it comes to Canada First. And further, pretty much all the racism that I've encountered in recent years are from leftists such as this. The left cannot fathom how a person of color in Canada could have conservative viewpoints. And by the way, I'm not even that conservative. I voted for left-leaning parties in my life way more than right-leaning parties, although I guess that's going to change from now on. So with the left, it's all about these subtle jabs about how you're a race traitor if you're a person of color who agrees with the right. And, you know, cut it out, stop it. You all look like clowns. And I put a picture of the comment. So what are you guys' response? Do you think my kind of rebuke or criticism is valid, or what do you think of that comment? And just what do you think of everything I said?
Yeah, I thought it was well said. I couldn't have said it really better than that. That's why I just gave him the middle finger, because I couldn't really say much more. But yeah, I mean, I just think that the current the current culture of debate on the left has become something that's just like chased us all out of it. Like, all of us always kind of at different degrees, but we all kind of talk about how we like mostly have voted for leftist parties our whole lives, and have felt like we're getting chased out of the left just because they debate in such a childish way. It's all about labeling and name calling, and they like set up these traps so that, like, if you say Canada First, now they can call you a white supremacist, and then you just defended Canada First, so they're calling you kind of like I guess the Asian Canadian version of an Uncle Tom, or whatever would be the right terminology for this context. But like they just set up traps, and they set up debates and use debate tactics that make it so that like most of us are kind of done talking to them, and like just like walk away from their movement. And that's kind of, they've kind of marginalized themselves in a way that just by their own behavior. And a lot of it's online, but that online behavior comes out into real life often. In my own experience, I've kind of seen it.
Yeah, I think it's very frustrating the way that the left has started these sort of conversations, kind of to piggyback off what Sunil was saying, because like, it's like, generally speaking, I am pretty socially left-leaning, but the second you have a differing opinion on any of these topics, for whatever reason, or even if you don't even necessarily have a differing opinion, but you're willing to question a agreed upon position, you immediately get attacked very aggressively, and I don't think that that's very compelling, because obviously getting attacked, no one enjoys getting attacked in a debate, or an argument, or even a conversation, but like, I feel like I remember a point in the past where the political parties were kind of like trying to convince you of what they had to offer, and try and, you know, let me bring you to my side. See, I am conservative. I'm going to talk to you about the economy. You like the economy, right? I'm the liberals. I'm going to talk to you about, you know, social stuff is good. You know, why can't gay people get married? Like, and you know, we're all going like, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. You know, and they're trying to convince you on who to vote for. And now it feels like if you were previously voting for one side, but then you disagree on one of the topics, so you're like, I don't like how the liberals are managing the economy. Now you are like, I don't know, the Antichrist. Like you're public enemy number one, and they're going to just trash you instead of try and convince you on how your perspective is incorrect and how you should consider a different point of view. It's just immediately to aggression rather than a discussion. And I find that that's very, very frustrating because I would much rather someone convince me on why, or give me a compelling argument. And even if I don't necessarily agree, I can at least understand their perspective. But it just feels like a lot of this turns into just kind of standing on a soapbox and yelling about how the other side is terrible, while not really communicating how your side is any good, because there's this base assumption that your side is good. And I'm not saying this is just the left that does this, but it's just like more recently I've noticed that the left has really leaned into this in the last like few years. That's been making it considerably harder to really enjoy like a lot of discussions with that people who are on that side but too deep, you know, if that makes sense. So I just thought that kind of flows into this as well, which kind of went off on a tangent there, but it's I feel like it was related.
Okay, yeah. I just think the entire situation is completely nuts, and that person just needs to reevaluate their perspectives for a moment. I don't think necessarily this whole situation was meant. How do I explain this into words? I just can't. I don't really understand as to why they would find any reason to jab you, just because you have like a different political like view on like this whole situation. Because I don't even know what to say, but I think fundamentally it's just like kind of what you guys were talking about. They kind of think, oh, left is good, so I'm always going to support the left no matter what. And if there's only like a slight amount of disagreement, I'm going to completely jab on the person, rather than if you were to just like completely reflect on your true beliefs, then you would realize where, you know, like the true choices need to happen. And this is like just hating for no reason instead of just like reevaluating and assessing the situation properly. And it's total internet hate. And I guess what you said, Andy, was completely correct and everything. And yeah, there's nothing you could do with these people, honestly. It's just we gotta just ignore these comments and just move on. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And as I said, just re-emphasizing the point I said earlier, these like subtly racist jabs are really not helpful, right? So this person is implying that, oh, Canada First is racist, and people like you, if you support that opinion, if you support, you know, the conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, whatever, then like, oh, they're gonna totally reject you because they're going to call you a foreigner and say you're not real Canadian. Like, who's saying that, right? You're the only one who's saying that. Pierre is not saying that. And I've never heard of that from the conservative side when you know, they're talking about Canada First or just at all. So it's just, yeah, like in my opinion, this kind of stuff is subtly racist, if not like outright racist, and it drives people away, right? Like it's like, it's just, it comes from a disconnect where the left, not saying the entire left, but just a significant portion of the left here in Canada, they're like, oh, I like, if you're a person of color, then you should definitely vote for me because, you know, I'm gonna be like the DEI, like I'm gonna push DEI and help people of color and help, like, you know, the people who are not the majority or whatever. So you should definitely support me, and if you don't, then you're a traitor to your entire like race or demographic, whatever it is. It's the implication, right? That's kind of what I'm getting at. And what I'm saying is that this type of putting people into boxes, it's really working against the left. It's actually driving a lot of people away. And as I said, I'm socially pretty left leaning as well, believe it or not. But it certainly drove me away, and these types of comments are really not helpful. Sunil, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I have 2 points, but one just to add to what you were saying. Like, there's like an element of like them like coming and educating you and being like, "Oh, Mister like person of color, Mister like Asian man, do you know there's racists in this country, and I have to educate you on that." Like, it's like you don't even know how to navigate yourself through this country. It's like they just like assume that you just don't understand. You're ignorant because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So I just think that there's like an element of like I don't know. I guess you use the word racism, but like it's condescending. It's a very condescending way of talking to people. So like when people have talked to me like that, it just doesn't come across the right way. It's not the right like. Just stop going to people of color and only talking about race. Like you could talk about the weather too. You could talk about other things. You don't need to always educate us on race. If we want to actually talk about other things too. We don't want to just sit around talking about race all day. And then the other thing is that like they remind me of people who are like not loyal to a party or loyal to like a political argument, but they're like loyal to a regime. Like they kind of it comes across that way, the way they talk, because it's so formulaic and like they're following a formula, and then they say insert word, insert racist, insert sexist for whatever, and then they like weaponize whatever they're weaponizing, and then they insert the word that gets the other person in trouble, basically.
Yeah, makes sense. And we'll go through one more comment, and then we can maybe call it a day. So the last comment I wanted to go through today was, I believe this one was directed at Tristan. So I'm going to let Tristan go first and respond to it and give him an opportunity to defend himself. So this was on the Mark Carney video on the other one that blew up, where I believe, Tristan, you said something along the lines of you found Mark Carney moderately compelling. So this is actually the kind of, you pissed off the other side now. So now you pissed off the conservatives. So the conservatives are now pushing back against you, saying that, oh, like you're stupid for saying that Carney is moderately compelling. So I don't think this person watched the entire video, first of all. But even then, like, I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of maybe clarify what you meant when you said you found a Mark Carney moderately compelling. Like, is he really that compelling enough to you for you to consider voting for him? Like, where do you stand on kind of the general election, assuming that Mark Carney is going to be the Liberal leader, which it seems like there's like a 98% chance of that happening right now. What do you think of kind of where the political scene in Canada lies, and where do you stand on which candidate you like, assuming that Mark Carney does win the Liberal leadership? And just how would you like to defend yourself in general against this comment?
Yeah, so this person definitely did not watch the whole video. They watched that first 5-second thing where I was like, I don't even know if I said that I find him moderately compelling, or if I said that I think that he's moderately compelling, or something along the lines. I don't remember exactly what I specified. But the reason I was saying that wasn't because I found him compelling per se. It was that I can understand why other people, like, who would be in the voting booth, would find him more compelling. And if you follow in the video, I immediately followed up by a comparison between him and Justin Trudeau. I was actually saying more so that I found that I could see why people will find him more compelling than Justin Trudeau, because Justin Trudeau is he's not, like, he didn't exactly roll into Parliament with a resume of stuff that is sort of similar to being a prime minister. whereas at least Mark Carney, you know, he did work for the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, I think it is, like title wise is the UK equivalent to the Bank of Canada. So like he's at least been in some of these kind of more financial specific roles, like economist stuff. So like I was merely saying that I could understand why he might be seeing a spike in the polls. I wasn't trying to sell anyone on Mark Carney. I wasn't sitting here like, wow, Mark Carney, that's my boy. I'm gonna vote for him 3 times if I can. Nothing to that extent. I was just I mean, it's literally like they watched the first 5 seconds where I was like, oh, he's moderately compelling, without following the context on what I was actually saying, which is very much the comparison factor. It's like I'm not. This was not a video where I was talking up Mark Carney's glory and how he was the best candidate this country needs. It was very much actually, I would say, relatively critical of Mark Carney. I would say like if you put this into a sentiment analysis, I think you would have come out with a slightly negative perception of him. And yet they somehow spun it to being positive of him. So, you know, I appreciate the right rolling in here to give us the alternative perspective of, hey, I've watched 5 seconds of your video. I've come to a 100% conclusion on what you're trying to say, and I have decided that you're stupid and I should let you know about it. Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, I can't fix your stupid either, because clearly you didn't watch enough of the video to know what the fuck I was saying.
You know that part where you said my boy Mark Carney? I'm gonna clip that exact part and use it as our intro for this week. So thanks for giving us that. It'll get us so much views, because then you'll get a bunch of people leaving angry comments who did not watch the entire segment.
I'm gonna get inundated. I'm gonna get both sides. I'm gonna have the libs coming in and seeing that and being like, yeah, and then they're gonna actually listen to me talk, and they're gonna be like, and then the right's gonna come in and be like, see, there's just the first bit, not watch anything else. I'm like, so I'm gonna be like completely inundated. I'm gonna be that that guy, just gunfire on all sides, you know, standing in the middle.
Anything for the views, man. Listen, I think you're in a very good position, like in terms of where you lie politically on this podcast, because you know we have we talked about this last week actually, where how we're, you know, becoming a conservative podcast, and I'm trying to avoid like the becoming like a cringy conservative podcast. But let's face it, like at this point the Overton window has shifted a lot to the left, where a lot of people, including us, have felt a little bit left behind. But all things considered, I think maybe Tristan, you're like the Jay Cali equivalent, right? If we're the all-in podcast, I'm the David Sachs, Sunil is the Chamath, Dom, you're the David Freeberg, who just wants to talk about science and doesn't give a shit about politics. And then Tristan, you're the Jay Cal, right? So I think it's good to have that balance, right? And you're probably in a good spot when you get angry comments from both the left and the right, which shows that you're probably the most centrist out of all of us. So congratulations on that. So if no one else has anything else to add, that's actually all I have for today's episode. We're a little bit shorter of an episode this week. I think everyone's in a down mood because Bitcoin just fell a lot as this show was going on. So a little bit of a short week this week, but next week we'll have a full docket again, I'm sure. So if no one else has anything else to add, let me pass it off to Dom for the outro.
Yeah, for sure. So as per usual, I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast, because we definitely did for sure. Prayers to our portfolios, because we definitely need it. And with that being said, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and peace.
Have a good one.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.
See you next week. Keep on stacking.